Our guest today had an 18-year professional baseball career, managed every level of baseball over the last 22-year period, and has created the firm Foundation Baseball. Our guest today is Danny Sheaffer. We'll be discussing his new book, Keep Digging, Discovering the Greatest Story Ever Told Through the Greatest Game Ever Played. Danny, it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Hey, thanks. Great to be here this morning.
So, why did you choose Clemson University?
Well, I think Clemson University chose me, and it's a story I write about in the book that I thought I was going to be drafted in 1979 in high school, and 3 Mile Island had a meltdown in Pennsylvania, and we missed most of our baseball season, and that put those plans on ice. But um, I ended up writing a letter to the head coach at Clemson University as a I took to some advice from my high school coach, and so I wrote him a letter. No texts, no emails, no fax, nothing back then, and gave him the rest of our schedule and my statistics, and he showed up at a ball game a couple weeks later. And that night, he said he was in a hurry to get back to Clemson, and had an offer for me to come to Clemson where my parents wouldn't have to pay anything, and it was a full scholarship. All I had to do was accept it. And before I even said anything, my dad said, "That's where you're going." So it kind of wasn't my choice.
So, tell us about that feeling being selected in the first round of the Major League Draft in 1981 by the Boston Red Sox.
Yeah, well, obviously there was no MLB network and no draft shows or anything like that back then. And when I got drafted, I got a call from my high school coach, and he said, "Hey, congratulations, you were just drafted by the Baltimore Orioles." And I was excited, but I didn't work out for Baltimore. I didn't even know they were in the cards. And so the next morning, there was a knock on my door in Pennsylvania at my parents' house, and it was a Western Union telegram. And that's how I received the notice that I was drafted in the first round by the Boston Red Sox. And subsequently, that later that day, my scout that drafted me, he showed up at my house, and we signed a contract, and when we were off.
Nice. Like you were saying, they certainly do things different now than back
Yeah,
then.
yeah, they do. I would have loved to have the experience of listening to your name being called, but that was way before the time. My son actually had the experience hearing his name be called, so I kind of lived vicariously through him for a while.
Oh, neat. Who was he drafted by?
He was drafted by the Tampa Bay Rays in 2013. He didn't sign. He went on to play college baseball in California, and then later signed with the Seattle Mariners and had a 6-year career with them.
Nice. How did it feel to hit a home run in your first MLB game?
Yeah, that was pretty cool. That was in Milwaukee, and it was the third game of a 3-game series. I didn't play the first 2 games, and we were playing on a day game in Milwaukee County Stadium. And I remember that I think I hit a line drive to Paul Molitor my first at bat, and then I flew out, and then I had a single off Mike Birkbeck, and then in the seventh inning we had a game we were down by a run, and Chris Bosio served up a pretty good 2-0 fat fastball, and I hit it out of the stadium, and it was short lived because the next inning, B.J. Surhoff, who had a pretty good career himself, he ended up hitting a home run to beat us. But that home run tied the game in the seventh inning in Milwaukee, and it was pretty exciting.
Nice. Another interesting thing was that you were a part of the inaugural Colorado Rockies team. What was
Yeah,
that experience like?
yeah, I was, and really, um, I was bouncing around between AAA and the big leagues with the Indians and the Twins and the Pirates after the Red Sox. My venture there was over, and I had a choice in the winter of '92 to sign with the Chicago White Sox, and the money was pretty good at that time, and I was starting to raise a family and newly married and all of that. But um, the Rockies came on the scene, and before they even had the expansion draft or even named a manager, they were signing players. And they had called me because the general manager of the Rockies, Bob Gebhardt, was an assistant general manager of the Twins the year before, and I was playing for them in AAA and had a couple of pretty good years. And they called and offered me a contract, and it was by far less money on the minor league side than the White Sox, and so I ended up taking opportunity over money, and it worked out really good. And the way the cards fell in spring training in '93, I ended up making the team, and yeah, Joe Girardi and I were the two catchers, and Joe ended up getting hurt and opened the door for me to catch about 70 games my first year in Denver, and um, that put me on a path of another 5 or 6 years in the big leagues, and it was a lot of fun.
Nice. So it sounds like there were a lot of highs, there were a lot of lows.
Mm-hmm.
What was another one of the highs?
Well, besides making that Rockies team and playing in front of 80,000 people in Mile High Stadium before Coors Field was built, uh, I ended up after the strike year in '94 going to St. Louis with the Cardinals, and when we went back to Denver to play the Rockies, there was a game I was playing, and the night before I had struck out on three straight sliders from Bruce Ruffin, and uh, the next night I wasn't playing in the game, but we were down by 2 runs, and it was the top of the ninth inning, and Bruce Ruffin was on the mound to close the game, and I was sent up as a pinch hitter with the bases loaded, and the first pitch was a slider, and I hit it about 450 feet to left center field, and it was my only grand slam in the big leagues, but it was a memorable one. It beat my former team.
Oh wow, definitely that's quite memorable.
Yeah, it is, and the other ones are playing for guys like Joe Torre and Tony La Russa and Jim Leland, Hall of Fame managers, and we ended up playing in the NLCS with the Cardinals in '96. Ended up getting beat by the Braves in Game 7, but um, my major league career was really memorable for me because it came after you know most of my time in the big leagues was after age 30, and that's unusual for today.
The thing that I find most impressive about your career is how you played all eight positions in a
Yeah.
major in the major leagues. I mean,
Uh,
not many people can say that, and I believe you started.
yeah, I did. I started well, I started everywhere except shortstop, and a guy named Ozzie Smith had something to say about that. So I once I got out of the American League and got to the National League, obviously versatility was huge. And playing for guys like Torre and La Russa who used the bench really really well, um, I ended up starting every position in the major leagues except for shortstop. And um, uh, my first base uh, my first base venture was good. I enjoyed it, and then we traded for a guy named Mark McGuire, so that kind of stopped that. So, but yeah, the versatility card got me a lot of time in the big leagues.
Nice. So, what moment was the biggest test of your love of the game?
Oh boy. Well, there was a time when I was with the Cleveland Indians, and it was in 1989. It was in spring training, and um, that I had made the club out of spring training. At least I thought I did. And then the last day, we traded Mel Hall for Joel Skinner. And obviously, Joel Skinner was a catcher, and so was I. And so I was told at the last day that I had to go back to AAA. And so going back and telling my wife that we had to go back to the minor leagues was not fun. And we were kind of pressured a little bit by family and friends about it's about time get a real job, and this, are you going to keep doing this and traveling around the country, and so I thought briefly about it, and when I say briefly, it was probably 5 seconds, and then it was just motivation to get going and work a little bit harder. um, I don't think as far as a player, other than that brief moment, there were lots of setbacks, there was lots of roadblocks, there was lots of obstacles, but I don't think anything stopped me from loving what I did.
So, it sounds like the core of who you are is your faith and trust in Jesus. Having that helped get you through that moment and other moments like it.
No, there's no doubt about it. I mean, there's no way I could have continued my career on the path I was on. The first 6 years of my career was, I was living for myself, and I had goals that were just self-serving, and and through the process of an organization called Baseball Chapel, I ended up going to church every Sunday, in the clubhouse, whether it was in the stands or whether it was in the dugout. But it was a group of guys, and we kept hearing the gospel day in and day out. And it took me quite a long time to get through my thick skull, but finally in 1986, I trusted Jesus as my Savior, and turned my life around, and basically changed the goals. And it was to glorify Him instead of myself. And so, however things went, I looked at it as God's in control, and all I can do is just keep digging and keep going and keep going, and see where He takes me. And so I don't think I could have handled all the ups and downs. Matter of fact, I know I couldn't handle it the way baseball is so relentless, and it's unforgiving, and disappointing at times. There's no way I could have handled it. Guys, you look at guys in the game today, and there's guys that get in trouble off the field. There's guys that go to substance abuse. There's guys that just their marriages are trashed, and not everybody, but there's a large amount, and it's because that their world revolves around baseball and not around something bigger.
But what does success mean to you?
Well, well, success to me it meant a lot differently. It was something that when I started, it was all about numbers. It was all about status. It was all about where I was on the totem pole, and as I grew, and my faith in Christ matured, success was doing the best I could, and leaving the results to God. And um, material success is no big deal. I've never strived for that. Um, Even before Christ, I didn't just strive for material things. But right now, at the end of the day, once I fall short all the time. I fail all the time, but at the end of the day, if I've done my best, and God's glorified, then to me that's success.
So you've managed on every level of the minor league.
Hmm.
At
Yeah.
what level were the players the most receptive?
Well, I'll answer that twofold. The players are most receptive to instruction um, early in their career. Rookie ball, which we don't have anymore because of the way the minor leagues have been condensed, but A ball, high A ball, they're really receptive to instruction, to advice. They're young, they're green, and because we did play in the major leagues, they look at us as if, hey, if he can do it, I can do it, and so they want to pick our brain. As far as receptive and to life issues, and to how to deal with things spiritually, the older players, because they're more mature, and they see the game a little bit differently than those that are young.
Your book, Keep Digging, is great
Hmm.
for aspiring players,
Hmm.
parents, and anyone navigating the world of sports. But who was your original target audience?
Well, I started writing the book in 2019, my last year in spring training with Tampa Bay, and um, I wrote the book just because I was kind of bored in spring training, and I just started writing about my baseball career and how it started in Little League, and eventually it progressed to about 500 or 600 written pages over the next couple of years, and it just kind of evolved into the sovereignty of God in my life, and how He's always in control. And there's so many roadblocks and distractions, and so when I wrote the book, it was written to players, not in this order, but players, parents, men, families, um, anybody that is navigating the world of sports. Because in travel ball today, the way the world is, the way this industry is, I mean, travel ball and amateur baseball is more of a god to these people than 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 it should be. And they have their kids out of church on Sundays, and they're playing all over the place. they're spending a fortune on a pipe dream that I think the industry is using the families today is to get rich, and so there's gonna be a fall. There's gonna be a day where people say, well, why was this? Why did I do all this? And was it all worth it? And so the book is basically a safety net for families, for players, for parents to kind of look at and say, there is a whole lot more than just these Saturday tournaments. And so, but as the subtitle of the book talks about, discovering the greatest story ever told through the greatest game ever played. I didn't set out when I started playing the game to learn who Christ is. It eventually through the game, I learned the truth of the gospel, and so it conveys that the gospel is clearly presented in the book, and there's a challenge to everybody in the book, and I hope it's well received.
So, is it fair to say that when you were chasing your dream of playing in the major leagues, it led you to discover an even greater one?
Nah, no doubt about that. There's highlights, and when I talked about the Grand Slam and talk about making the Rockies '93 roster, and there's a bunch of other ones in there. But the greatest highlight is April of 1986 when I finally it was revealed to me what the truth of the gospel is and who Jesus was, why he came, um, uh, how he died, and why he died, and the fact that he rose again and he's coming back. And so to me, that's the greater truth in the book.
So tell us a little bit about Firm Foundation, the baseball program.
Okay, when I before I retired, I started a little company and ended up building a facility in North Carolina, and I named it Firm Foundation. And Firm is an acronym, FIRM, and the acronym is Faith in Christ Alone. For F, I is integrity. It's a life I want to live. Uh, R is redeemed by the blood of Christ. And M is for maturity. One day we want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. And so, firm can be used two ways. Obviously, you have to have a firm foundation in sports and in life and all of that. But spiritually, a firm foundation is more important. So, in my facility, I teach kids, young kids from 8, 9 years old to professional guys that come in during the winter and off season. So I have a gamut of hundreds of kids, and eventually all those kids and their parents, hear the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, and in some circumstances, we've prayed with parents, and we, you know, seen some players come to Christ in my facility. And so I use it as a ministry as well as a teaching tool.
Nice. So, can our viewers outside of North Carolina learn from your program?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've got um, a DVD that I created that is now we're just running digital copies. It's called Firm Foundation Catching, and that can be ordered. But the way the catching program has changed, and way the teaching has changed in catching, that's kind of evolving as we go. But uh, really, the best way that anybody outside of North Carolina can see what Firm Foundation's about is by the book, and once they do that, then they can see what we're all about.
Why can players of any level benefit from working through these drills?
Well, the drills that are in the program, um, obviously that I didn't create them, because you know you can't create something from nothing, and so my mentors in the game, which were Ron Hassey and Dave Ricketts, to be specifically. Dave Ricketts were wonderful teachers when it comes to catching, and as a matter of fact, most of the stuff that I talk about to players, whether it's a young player or an older player, um, this stuff that was passed down to me from Dave Ricketts, who was one of the greatest catching instructors of all time with the Cardinals, um, I just added a few things to it to make it more relevant for today. And when you talk about teaching the game, when you talk about teaching catching or hitting or whatever you talk about, it's a game that the way you do it is the way you educate kids. I mean, you can't tell a first grader, you can't give him algebra two, and you can't give him
Mhm.
calculus. So the young kids really get the meat, you really get the milk of the program, and they the basics, and they get a foundation, and you can't expect too much out of them. And then when they get older, then you give them what they need. Um, but that's the way I do it, and because I understand that when I was developing professional players, and I developed hundreds of major league players over the years with the Astros, with the Cardinals, with the Rays, when I was managing, um, you give them what they can handle so they can experience success, um, because failure will beat you down, and so you got to experience some kind of success, and once you do that, then you can move on to something else.
Some people say that baseball is as much mental as it is physical. Would you agree with that?
Uh, yeah, I don't think there a truer statement has ever been said. There's a bunch of physical specimens on this planet that never could play baseball because of the mental aspect, and um, this is a daily grind. It's getting beat down and getting back up, and hopefully you get back up more than you get beat down. But it's a game of failure. Um, it's a game where uh, it didn't used to be as tough as it is now, because when I was coming through the minor leagues and developing, the only way my family and friends and parents could know what I was doing was by reading a Sunday newspaper and seeing a recap of the week, and see what I did, because we didn't have any cell phones. There's no internet. There's no way of knowing what went on across the country. Today, these kids are inundated with phone calls and text and social media, and everybody knows every move that they make, in real time. And so there's no time to sit and process what just happened. Uh, they have to deal with it right then, and so if you're not mentally tough, and mentally tough is doing, to me, it's doing things correctly, even when you're most uncomfortable. If you're not mentally tough, this game will destroy you.
One of the things that I, in reading the book and looking into you, was I was really impressed by the compliment Yandier Molina from the
Mm-hmm.
Cardinals. What he said about you. This catching program helped me to be where I am today.
Yeah.
There were a bunch of other ones that also had similar compliments. But I mean, how does it feel to have influenced the next generation?
Well, obviously he's a special kid, and he's going to be a Hall of Famer, and to have a compliment like that is humbling, to say the least. I remember Yachty is a very, very young player, and I coached him for 5 or 6 years before we sent him to the big leagues. And there were some times in his life where he wanted to quit the game because he wasn't doing very well at all. And one time was in Double A, and I had to sit down with him and in the clubhouse and basically put my arm around him and cry with him and tell him that he's going to be a superstar one day, and just make him believe in himself. And since then he turned things around, and those stories don't get told very much, but there's when I hear compliments from somebody like Yachty, or some of the GMs or scouting directors or college coaches of my program, it's humbling. But I know it's real, because I know those people mean what they say.
Danny, it has been a pleasure having you on the show. Before we let you go, where on social media, where on the web can they find out more about you and your programs?
Okay, well, as far as the book, Keep Digging, it's available on Amazon.com. Uh, it's for release on June 10th, so it's not for release yet, but pre-orders are available. Um, the my life is an open book, so to speak, no pun intended. And you see everything from the first day of Little League practice and how it went through state championships and College World Series and Major League World Series and all of that kind of stuff in the book. And you also see all the dirty stuff in between. So I can be reached at keepdiggingbook@gmail.com. Keepdiggingbook@gmail.com for any questions about the book, or about me in general, for speaking engagements or anything like that. But really, this book is I really mean for it to get out and to get in the hands of people that are hungry for baseball, that are hungry for sports, that are hungry for answers about life, and hopefully it makes a difference. But you can find me on social media on X at Sheaffer Danny. You can find me on Facebook, Firm Foundation Catching, and Instagram as well. But so I'm on all the venues.
Sounds great, Danny. It's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank you for the questions. It was good talking to you.